Welcome back to LaunchPod. Today, our CEO Joe Canavan is in conversation with one of our class of 2020 entrepreneurs, Eddy Chiang, CEO and co-founder of Moment Technology. Moment is a startup striving to provide greater access to renewable and reliable energy storage. They create battery units that can be used in a variety of applications and are currently focused on storing energy for off-grid, end-of-grid customers and plan on powering remote communities in the future. Listen to learn about Eddy's journey to entrepreneurship, the opportunities in renewable energy storage, and what the future holds for Moment. Enjoy.
Eddy, I got to tell you, I'm really excited to do this interview. I heard you and your team speaking a little bit about your project, a few weeks ago at the Venture Reveal, and it sounded very, very exciting. But let's talk a bit about you first, and then we'll talk a bit about your venture, because I read that you had become a pilot at a young age. Let's maybe talk a bit about what got you engaged in that.
Yeah, for sure. So since I was 12, I joined the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. Joined as in my mom forced me to, because she thought that I needed more discipline, because I was a really silent kid. I don't know how that equates, but that's kind of how I developed my passion for aviation. And when I turned 16, I was one of the 60 in BC to be selected for their glider pilot scholarship course. So I got my gliding license when I was 16, and then my private license when I was 17. It was great.
So your mother was right, because you've come out of your skin. I mean, you've got a very effervescent personality.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, I was a super shy kid. I'd always hide behind my mom whenever an auntie or uncle would come up to me. And I definitely do feel like I grew a lot, and I really developed my mentorship values and leadership values through that program.
So talk to me about that. So mentorship and coaching, how did you feel about that experience, and how has it shaped you as a young man?
Yeah, I still do it. So every Thursday night, I teach 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds, so back with the Royal Canadian Air Cadets, and I'm a civilian instructor there. And my goal is to kind of instill the passion that I have for aviation and flying, and hopefully train them to become pilots when they turn 16 and 17. And I think it's just a way to give back, and that also ties in with the next community. And I love how the alumni come back and kind of give back to mentor us. And without leaders that have actually gone through the whole process, you're kind of just left out into the wild, right? So I never want my students to feel that way. And my goal as a mentor is to make sure that they don't have to suffer through the things and the hardships that I have.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the things that I'm most excited and proud of is the mentorship program at Next, because you get such wisdom and maturity and experience from these people who have had a career of doing great and wonderful things. So it's exciting to hear that you've become a mentor to young people, and that now you have access to really strong mentors yourself. Tell me a bit about your path to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, I think there are two main things that really pushed me towards entrepreneurship. The first thing was watching my mom as I was growing up. So she's a single mom. She moved here when she was 25 from China. And just watching her literally with no money in the pocket go from waitressing at a dim sum shop to driving me around because she was also kind of a makeshift Uber in the early days of Vancouver, just to put herself through school, put food on the table, and then finally starting her own business and her own restaurant. So seeing that drive, and a huge sentiment within Next is the pursuit of opportunity without, regardless of any resources or lack thereof. That really struck home to me. And that's actually one of the huge things during the selection weekend that drew me towards Next 36 and made me think that the program was right for me, because it seems like it just resonated with the same values that I grew up with.
Okay, that's a pretty incredible story. And so the relationship that you have with your mother, not only as a single mom, which I still don't understand how difficult and how challenging that is, and working to, basically provide a great life for her son. And then starting your own restaurant. I mean, we all know that the failure rate in restaurants is really high, and being an
Yes.
entrepreneur is a really big struggle, and being a single mom. Like, oh my gosh, what a really amazing story, and what a great role model.
Mhm.
How is that relationship? And do you talk to your mother about, entrepreneurship and what you're building?
Yeah, she's really proud of me. And every week although I'm busy with my startup and she's really busy running her own business, um, we have our weekly walks around. So I live in Richmond and Vancouver. So we have our little walks around the beach and everything. And we talk about just like the troubles of the startup and the whole journey. And although we are working two completely different sectors, it's really, really helpful to have another entrepreneur to um, uh, talk to, sorry, because they can actually relate to the hardships that you've gone through. And that's another, I feel like I keep promoting Next 36. That's another huge reason why I wanted to come in Next 36 for that network. And they say that um, no matter no matter how close you are with your family, they might not understand the hardships and the journey that you go through as an entrepreneur. And that's why it's really, really crucial to have a good core friend group of entrepreneurs, no
Mhm.
matter what the topic of your companies are.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, I mean, you have a terrific relationship with your co-founder. Maybe talk a little bit about Samreen and how that partnership began.
Yeah. So Samarine is also one of my amazing co-founders that have joined me in Next 36, and her along with Grumesh and Gabriel, we're a team of four mechatronics engineers from Simon Fraser University, and we're pretty much best friends since first year engineering, and we developed over the past 4 to 5 years as best friends, um, and we decided to kind of work on a capstone project together. And our first startup was actually to help people with stress and anxiety, and we created a wearable that would enhance meditation and mindfulness-based exercises. And once we ran into a bit of regulatory issues there, where it just kind of cost too much to get FDA approval, and it took too much time. Instead of disbanding as a team, we started thinking, hey, we work really, really well together, and we really love each other's company, and we fill a lot of gaps in personalities and work ethics. So why not kind of just sit down and brainstorm some good ideas that we really shine in. And the topic that we really found that we were experts in was electric vehicles. And because we've either worked for Tesla, I've worked in the fuel industry for nuclear, and we kind of brought that all together and created our current startup that we're bringing to next.
Wow. Okay. So I have like a flood of questions, but I better keep it to what we're supposed to talk about. But creating a wearable like that, which I suspect was a competitor to Muse.
Mm.
Offline, I want to hear about that because that just sounds fascinating to me. Um, as we think about the problem that you're trying to solve
Mhm.
and how it relates to your experience with electric vehicles, maybe you can kind of take us from the inspiration and to where you are today.
Mhm.
And then maybe we talk about the vision for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because this is a big problem that you want to solve, and it's a grand vision.
Yeah, for sure. So there are actually two huge problems that we're trying to solve here. The first one more relates to our experience with electric vehicles, and we've actually built an electric race car from scratch with SFU, founding our team there. And what we found is, let's say you have a Nissan Leaf and you've driven it for 8 years. Initially, when you bought it, the mileage was, or the range was about 400 kilometers. But then now, after 8 years, you saw that, hey, it's only 60 kilometers. So it's probably time to turn it in. The problem is when these electric vehicles are disposed of, there's still 80% life left in these batteries. The only reason why you see a huge decrease in range is because driving an electric vehicle is very stressful for the batteries. But if you repurpose these, and that's kind of our goal, to repurpose electric vehicle batteries for remote communities, when we repurpose them to just as energy storage for either a home, renewables, whatever, we can extend the life of those batteries to 7+ years. And which leads into our second problem within energy in remote communities. So during my nuclear research, I lived in a more northern town north of Ottawa. And when the tornado hit in 2018 that hit Ottawa, it gave Ottawa a blackout of, let's say, half a day, but we were affected for a day to 2 days. And I started asking around, like, wow, like, coming from Vancouver especially, like, I've never experienced anything like that. And I asked around, like, is this normal? And they said, yeah, sometimes we have power, we go without power for 2 weeks. So that's when we really started digging deep, and we learned that, wow, in remote communities especially, they're really, really diesel dependent, and the reliability of their power is very low as well.
And I would suggest that diesel is really, really has a negative impact on the environment, correct?
Yes, for sure. And we see these remote communities, be it indigenous or non-indigenous, they're begging the government for a solution. They're begging for renewables, but when they're trying to install solar or wind or hydro, they're starting to learn, hey, especially in solar and wind, that it's very intermittent. So they could have 3 to 6 days without solar or enough solar. So that's kind of where our batteries can come in. And we see a huge opportunity here, because instead of mining new lithium, which is extremely harmful to the environment, these remote communities really value the full life cycle of repurposing and not needing to mine new lithium for their power storage. And it makes just renewables actually viable and possible for them.
So there is a proliferation of electric car companies. I mean, there are, a lot of them here in North America, but there are dozens, if I'm not mistaken, I'd say 80 electric car companies in China and growing. And as the cost of the electric car comes down and it hits that tipping point, there's going to be even greater demand, which means there's going to be even greater supply for you and your partners as you go around the world providing this solution. Do you see that as a really important part of the equation for success for you? Like, you're able to take this volume of electric batteries, and instead of them being thrown in some kind of trash facility, you're able to bring them back to life and give them a new purpose for, as you say, 7+ years.
Yeah, I see a huge opportunity and value here. And to give you one more insight as well, a lot of people think that recycling these electric vehicle batteries is an option, but in reality, it's really hard to do it because it's not profitable. So when we talk to locals, let's say if you have a Chevy Bolt, we were told that a consumer wanted to recycle 2 of their Chevy Bolts. And they were quoted that instead of getting money, like if you were to recycle a combustion vehicle, you'd usually get, let's say, $200, $500 and maybe some tax credits. You actually have to pay the recycler $4,000 to get it recycled, because the process of recycling lithium, and especially electric vehicle batteries, is just not profitable at all. So our goal is to really extend the life of these batteries so that hopefully recycling becomes profitable in the future.
So when you look out the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you talked about potentially going into indigenous communities and giving them an option away from their diesel generators to electric generators. Where else is the market for you, either in Canada, in North America, or globally?
Yeah, so right now within indigenous communities, we know our main focus is just develop the relationship and the trusting relationship, because we're really tired of seeing companies kind of go in, use them for grants, and kind of just leave them hanging after they realize it's more of a it's not 100% the, I guess, market opportunity that they see. So we're right now really just focusing on developing those trusting relationships and figuring out what their need is. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, you really need to focus on that need. While we're developing these relationships, we've actually been targeting the mining industry because they have the government has asked them, and they've been very receptive in electrification, especially since they use so much diesel. And we've also been targeting BC parks. So that's kind of where our initial pilot projects are going to be placed. So we're in the works of securing an LOI from a BC park 7 hours north of Vancouver. And yeah.
Wow. Okay, those are three really, really important areas of growth. To get to that level of growth and achieve the level of success that it sounds that you're going to achieve with certainty, it's going to require a pretty incredible team. Now, it sounds like your co-founder group are incredibly skilled. Talk to me about the rest of the organization as you build out for the future.
Yeah. So I think what's really valuable for us is that we are for mechatronics engineers, and we know how to build the product because we've built power packs and whatnot for our electric vehicles before. So what's really helpful, and that really lowers, I guess, our hiring costs there. What we're really looking for currently and into the future is leaders in the clean energy space and also just utility space, because we know that there hasn't been too much innovation within the utility space, but we still need these mentors and investors and experts to give us advice on how to really corner that market and help the market in general. Since these projects would essentially span to $5 to $10 million per project, we need the expertise to target them, really.
So on your path forward, you're going to need to raise capital. Have you started down that path?
Yeah. So right now we're within the next the next month, we're looking at starting a family and friends round and starting to look at some trusted angels around Vancouver and Toronto, and we actually have been connected with a couple of VCs thanks to Next 36. But yeah, we're definitely looking, and luckily there are a lot of grants as well with the government that can fund up to $100,000 to $500,000 worth of funding, which is great. We are open to investment, and especially with the hardware company and clean tech company, we know that we need the capital to start building and prototyping faster and bigger.
So you've got fundraising, building a team, sales and marketing. What other opportunities or challenges do you see in the months and years ahead?
Yeah, so one thing that we're really working on right now is getting connected with auto manufacturers. Since right now we are connected with one auto manufacturer, so Nissan, and to them, what really happens is when somebody is getting rid of their Nissan Leaf, for example, they ship the batteries back into the States, and then they test them, and then the batteries kind of sit on the shelf. So luckily for us, I guess, these auto manufacturers kind of see these EV cells as a byproduct, and they're just trying to find a very, very cheap way to kind of get rid of them, rather than having to pay $4,000 per electric vehicle battery. So where we're at right now is trying to fill in that gap, such as talking to Ford, GM, Hyundai, Kia, so that we can really diversify our supply of electric vehicle batteries and develop our IP around that.
So it's procuring the batteries, and I think Volvo's another one, right? They've gone either 100% or they're on track to become 100% electric.
Yes.
So it's attracting those companies that are willing to give you the technology that you need, and then connecting that technology once you've done your work into the smaller communities.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what else should we think about when we think about your company and we think about the impact? Talk to me about how you see the legacy for you and your co-founders and the impact that you're going to have on the world in terms of the quality of life in small towns, the eco footprint. Let's talk a bit about some of those things.
Yeah. On this topic, I think I would really like to highlight a scenario that really hit close to home for us as well, where diesel generators in general have been so normalized in our life, where if you go into an outdoor event and you have a bunch of bouncy castles at this outdoor event, you actually, if you kind of look off to the right, you would see diesel generators powering these bouncy castles. And these, and this is actually goes towards our first couple pilots too, where organizers actually really dislike, and also parents dislike, the sight of having kids jumping around in bouncy castles right beside a diesel generator that's pollutant. So it has toxic fumes, they're hot and super noisy, right? But there hasn't, for about like 50 to 100 years, there hasn't been any innovation in a more sustainable, clean, quiet solution. And we really want to normalize essentially energy storage, because we are clean, we're repurposing, no new lithium, we're quiet, and if the kid touches our generator, nothing happens. It's totally fine and it's totally safe. And our goal in the overarching legacy is to really normalize safe power.
You know, I gotta say, I know we're coming up to time, but you're providing like just an end-to-end solution. So you're providing a solution for all of those automakers that are producing these batteries and giving them a second life, which is, I think, magnificent. And I think that they should be running to you to engage you so that they can tell all of their key stakeholders, hey, listen, you know, when a car comes back, we're not filling, you know, landfill with our batteries. We're actually providing a second life for them. And then to those event producers or the towns or the facilities that you're targeting, I mean, you're giving them an opportunity to do something that is better for their community, better for their stakeholders. And really, you're creating an opportunity with your ingenuity, your innovation, you and your partners, you know, taking all of that, you know, academic intellectual firepower, and you're putting it to commercialized use. I think this is the classic entrepreneurial journey and the classic entrepreneurial success story. I gotta say, Eddy, I want this to succeed so badly because it hits all the key elements of what really innovation and entrepreneurship are all about.
Yeah.
And
thanks.
quite frankly, I think it's going to be great for your walks with your mother, because she's going to watch you grow, you know, from, you know, this, you know, startup entrepreneur to being a globally successful business leader. And sorry to, you know, put so much on your shoulders, but I see immense opportunity and success in your future.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's really the goal, right? The goal is to essentially have a huge impact within Canada and also even greater throughout the world. And yeah, just really help as many people as possible. And we really didn't see a way of doing that without Next. And that's why we really came here, to get your help and really kickstart and skyrocket us to the next level.
Well, that's why Reza, Ajay, Tim, and Claudia founded Next, is to bring, you know, young, you know, intellectually capable people who have great creative, innovative ideas, help bring those ideas to life and change the world that we live in as a result of that. That was the vision then. You know, 10 years later, we know it's succeeding because, you know, you're fulfilling that. And you and the other members of your cohort, I mean, I think we're going to launch 70 or 80 companies out of Next Canada this year, and another 20 to 30 out of Next AI Montreal. And so I hope our founders are very, very proud. And I have to say that I really enjoyed our discussion today, and I'm going to be cheering you on from the sidelines as I watch you and your team succeed. Thank you so much, Eddy.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for tuning into LaunchPod. We're so proud to be part of this community doing such great things to move our country forward. But our reach only goes as far as your support. So please download and subscribe to amplify the voices doing the hard work to advance Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem.